Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our April event of Inside Redesign. Today, we are pleased to have with us Miss Katie Perez and Miss Ginger Lumen, and of course, our host, Dr. Steve Wyckoff, and myself, Mike Cook. And so we are ready to roll with our April version here of Inside Redesign.
So Mike, I don't want to put any pressure on anyone,
Okay.
but one of our attendees is Diana Whelan from Colby.
Ah,
I mean, the pressure is on.
hi, Diana.
Hey, those of you that are out there listening, if you want to ask us a question or just comment, jump on the chat and we'll be glad to answer any question or address anything you throw at us. But Ginger and Katie, we had you on 2 weeks ago, and we talked about the first week of kids actually working at home, and we agreed you'd come back today and give us an update. So what are you seeing now? Katie, we were visiting about your daughter, and so you have firsthand experience with working at home with a kid. So who's going to go first? Well, tell us what you're hearing from teachers and schools.
And nose goes, huh? Yeah, I think I've been hearing kind of mixed bag of things from teachers right now. There are some that are starting to feel like the honeymoon is over, and that now the struggle of getting kids to see the value and the importance in the work being sent home is starting to happen. And I've also heard schools and teachers say that they're having great success and they're getting 85-95% of their kids jumping on every call and are excited to be there and connect with each other. And so I think right now I'm hearing kind of the both and side of things, which doesn't surprise me. At home, I will say the honeymoon is over. And so that is, I expected that to happen. And so we're trying to kind of reprioritize and re-engage with why school is important and how we do the work that is sent home, but how we also do things that push our brain and cause us to have to really think and deepen understanding. So that balance is hard. I'm kind of hearing both sides of it. Ginger? Since you let me go first, I'll let you go second.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's how this goes. I guess I'm hearing sort of similar things. Mostly I talk to K-12 across the board, and I'm keeping an eye on the conversations that are happening in the Kansas Educator Facebook group, which right now I think we've got 15,800 educators in there. And I think that the pressure of being at home is starting to get to both teachers and to families, that this was novel, this was something different, and we were scrambling to figure it out, and now we're kind of figuring it out. And I think what Katie's saying is that we're either going to lay on the side of, yeah, we got this, keep going, but I'm still tired of being here. And the other side of, now I'm really spun out, because not only do I not know what I'm doing with school, but I don't even want to do anything anymore. And it's interesting. I will say I've had an opportunity to talk to some educators, and yesterday the leadership team of one of the elementary schools that I work with, and they were game of the redesign schools that I work with. They're like, no, we're good. The kids are coming on board. We're having conversations with almost everybody on a regular basis. We're planning for August of 2021. And they're having conversations, and they're not scared about it. And they're not, I mean, there's some nervousness, but they're saying we're seeing opportunities. We know we're going to see more opportunities. We know we're probably not going to open up in August, but we might. And so we're planning for all options. And they're not afraid of really opening up deep redesign, because they're saying, we've been teaching age groups. I don't know that that's our strength anymore. I think that we need to teach kids, and they're the ones bringing it up. They're saying things like, maybe some of our kids do come face to face, and maybe some never do. And maybe I am an online teacher for those kids now, because that's a strength and comfort of mine. When lady said, I thought, I just took
Wow.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a couple of conversations with the redesign schools that I support, both in Gemini, well, I guess 1, 2, and Apollo, kind of saying the same thing. Like, let's hold space for all of that in our head, so that we can, with the hope we go back in August, what does it look like, and how do we re-engage? And if we go back in October, and if we don't go back at all next year, and like, let's kind of go ahead and plan for 3 different scenarios, so we're not caught off guard in August of, oh, wait, we're not going back. Like, we were just temporarily thinking about this. And so I've been bringing that conversation up in our talks, as we're meeting. And I can see the light bulbs turning with possibilities of things light bulbs turning. That doesn't make sense, but the wheels turning, I guess. I've been at home for 35 days, guys. That's bringing possibilities to their mind, and that they're not quite sure yet what those possibilities are. Like, okay, I can see that there's options, not ready to see them through the fog yet. And I think that's okay. I think we just don't want to be afraid of thinking about those realities as well. And I think something we've learned in redesign, one of the words that we use, it's kind of one of those things where it just becomes kind of an inside jokey kind of word over time, because it reminds me of a Friends episode. But like, when are we going to pivot, and what are those pivot points going to be? And sometimes it feels like we're yelling pivot at each other, like in that episode where they're trying to get that couch up the stairs. But what are those points? I'm seeing that become a play right now for schools, that they made some decisions about their continuous learning plan. I'm going to pause and I'm going to look at Dr. Cook on my computer screen and say, I'm going, okay? You stop me if I get too far here. They made some plans with their continuous learning plan under duress. There was no one who sat down and said, hey, I know it would be really fun right after spring break. Let's not come back to school. Let's do virtual learning. Let's homeschool and just, see how it goes. Like, this isn't some experiment we're doing. This is something that we are being forced to do. This is something that is being handed to us. We did not make this choice. And that, coming from a trauma-informed background, that is a traumatic experience to have these things ripped away from us. And then we were required to put a plan in place within a week and begin rolling it out. I want us to ask, is there a way right now that we're seeing that plan as we're a couple of weeks in, and have we identified small points that we need to pivot on? Things that we see aren't working. And instead of saying, well, we planned it and that's what we said, and we sent it to the state and it was approved and we've told parents and it's still not working, we need to kind of go and say, instead of, man, it makes me look weak, or it makes me look stupid, or it makes me look like I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not competent right now, if we have to change aspects of our plan. I think what it says is, wow, we've never done this before, and this area is not rolling so well. Our apologies. Let's make this right for your kids. This is a great time with our families to build trust, a great time with our students to show them that we can do things, we can continue to show up for them, and we can't do that if we don't admit that there are bumps and start to find solutions for them now.
And to rewrite our policy to be flexible for kids and families in front of us. Mm-hmm. School I was talking with yesterday, they're like, this is personalized learning. This is what we've been talking about. We weren't doing it. We were kind of playing at the edges, and now we are. And now let's double down. Let's go. And they're like, PBL? This is how we're going to do that. Ginger, you got support for us on PBL online, right? And I'm like, I got you. And they can't wait. Even if they do go back to school full-time, face-to-face in August, they are now really talking about personalizing learning. Mm-hmm. And writing policy that's flexible, not policy that says all kids, but policy that says each kid will have what they need.
Yeah.
That's
And
exciting.
that's what my schools have been talking about a little bit. They're still not quite sure what does that look like and how do we do it right now under duress. But let's start talking about it because I go back to phrases. I like catchphrases, but I keep thinking about Mr. Conradi. When something bad happens, make something good happen, right? And so we got that one. Let's do it. Let's make something good happen. And then we got Dr. Cook over here who always tells us, let's do something even if it's wrong. Okay, we did something. Let's admit where we need to fix it, and let's continue to fix it. I think that that's what less is more and give grace means in this situation. Not just we planned it, let's go, we're sticking with it.
And I would add to that, Katie, that the commissioner, right, Dr. Watson, is fully on board with pivoting. He has said it on nearly every day during his daily briefing. We have some great plans coming in, but understand we have to be able to pivot. Once they're approved, you have to be able to pivot. And the key is communication with your parents, and exactly what you said. This is an experiment. We don't have the answers, but give us grace and mercy, and we need to change and get it right.
Yeah. And the things that we're doing are all with positive intent.
Right.
We're doing everything we can with the best we have right now in the moment, and the best we have can get better every day.
I really like too, though, in seeing how different schools interpreted the continuous learning plan, that one, it still fits even now based on what we now know. So that the continuous learning plan is not something I don't think that people are needing to pivot on. I think they're needing to revision what their policies were put into place based on. I think the continuous learning plan is solid.
Solid, spot on. Yeah, I am not at all saying anything about that. That document that was put together, again, under stress. I mean, they worked their tails off, and it is the outline, the guidelines are amazing. It is what we did with the interpretations that we need to pivot on, the plans, that how we interpret it and what we put into place. And not everybody and not every decision that was made, but we need to be asking ourselves, did we make the right ones?
And then the second thing I've noticed is that as we are looking at the continuous learning plan and our redesign schools, as they say, okay, this is what we were doing, and let's check this back again, what we're doing against the continuous learning plan, against what we know is what is right, and against the 4 redesign principles. These are still in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
These are all still good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all we need to do is just keep adjusting this part based on who's in front of us and what we believe for them and what they're telling us. And I hear fear from them, but it's not a showstopper fear. It's a fear of, don't know, but I'm holding my breath and we're jumping in, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I do see some schools who have interpreted that continuous learning plan, who I hope they take the opportunity to pivot, because the word accountability is starting to pop up loudly as we start to get comfortable right now, kind of where we currently are, wherever we are. We've been doing this a while. We're kind of getting into a flow. Now we are trying to, in the last 3 weeks of school, hold our kids accountable to maybe what we want them to be doing in regard to work, which may or may not be aligned to the continuous learning plan, but to what we think they should be able to be over it by now. Not everybody's doing that. I think that's a rare occasion, but it is happening, and I think it's growing.
Yeah. I think too, just kind of the idea that what we sent home matters to all kids in the same way, and is representative of what they as individuals would have been doing in the classroom. When I think about being in a classroom and teaching, 4th grade is the grade that I most recently taught. There was nothing I could imagine having sent home that would have targeted each individual kid in a meaningful kind of way. Like I could have gone into Odyssey where, because we had that in my last district. And I could have assigned things that were at their level, and they could have logged in at home, and they could have had things printed off for them there. And is that meaningful? It's like I would have met one, but not the other, right? And so it is a great opportunity to think about that. I like that you said the 4 redesign principles, because I think that's been in the back of my head as I've been having conversations. And I'm not sure that I've said that out loud, to say, let's look at these 4 and let's put into these 4 areas where your continuous learning plan is meeting those 4 redesign principles. That makes me want to go back and have that conversation with some of my schools again. I always learn so much when I talk to you, Ginger. Thank you.
I'm just trying to make sure that they said, let's have a redesign conversation.
Yeah.
Let's roll back to our 4 principles and see
Mm-hmm.
where we are.
Yeah.
You know,
And then
I didn't know when I opened that up. I thought maybe they're going to say the 4 principles are now off kilter. They're not where we should be. And that's not what they said.
Yeah.
And I looked at it at the exact same time they were. And I was like, well, what do I think?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of nice. It's good.
So I have a question for you guys. Because the conversation you are hearing, you two, is different than the conversation Mike and I are hearing.
Surprise.
And I'm thinking back, we had a little different conversation. We were talking to one superintendent that's in a redesign school who was very positive, and, you know, we're just continuing on. But now, this is not a quote, but we've had several say and many imply, we're just getting to the end of the year. There's no real education going on. We're giving kids work to do. Nobody's grade is going to go down as a result of this. Let's get to May, and they've got a date, 12th, 16th, you know, whatever. And they're saying, get to there, and then we'll come back to our building in August and go back to real school.
I want to dig out what Harvard said, that publication they sent out. I didn't read it terribly closely, but I'm going to try to dig it out and send it to you guys, where they said that we may not be going back to schools until
2022. So intermittent social distancing from now until 2022. So what would that impact be on schools? And how do we set ourselves up now to the idea that we might not return, or we might be doing this occasionally? So we get to go for a few weeks and then we go home for a few weeks. And what does that look like in a way that builds trust and security with our kiddos?
So you've all seen this chart, okay? And I think that in Kansas, we're doing a really good job of flattening the curve. But if you look at the relationship to flattening the curve and not flattening the curve, like New York City right now, they're saying maybe by the end of the month, they will be up in this area right here. That they will be starting now. Well, think of how long it took to get from here to here. Then think about this flattening this curve. This was weeks. This is going to be weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks before we have flattened that curve and we go back to school. And, you know, one of the conversations we had yesterday was, if you come back to school and one kid tests positive, do we close down again, and for how long?
Right. And I think the idea that in Kansas, we are seeing a small flatten. I mean, we're seeing, I'm a nerd, I'm tracking it. Got a spreadsheet, share it with you if you want it. But we are seeing that there are fewer cases being reported, and it appears like we maybe are doing that. But we're also in the very central of a very large country. And so just because our county or our state itself is doing a really good job doesn't mean that the restrictions will be lifted. And so I think that's big. I was wondering though, if I could, I think that the idea of this kind of goes along with something I've been sharing with districts in the past several days. I don't know, do I have screen sharing capabilities, guys? I do. May I go ahead? Can I have some permission to share here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this is some work that I've been doing with the resilience team for a little while here, on just kind of protective factors and facets of building, using this as a time to build resilience for our kiddos and our staffs and just our communities, I guess, in general. And so when we look at these protective factors, we're normally talking about these 6 categories right here exist all of the time, right? These are the things we want kids to be able to develop and be able to express in their life. Like, content aside, I think that this group generally agrees that content is not, we can Google most of it, right? But we're trying to develop people who are learners, people who are community members, those kinds of things. So these protective factors exist. And a big one there, if we look under relationships, is that kind of attachment to caring adults and developing a trust with other people. And it's that trust that I'm worried about right now when we're talking about continuous learning plans. Because one of the things I hear schools saying, and I totally get it, is that grades is the motivator and the carrot and stick that we have right now. Like, from a distance, that's what we have. And so we're going to tell kids that they're being graded, and we're going to put in zeros, or we're going to call out missing work, and we're do all these things. But then we're also on the backside saying, but in the end, it's not going to matter. Their grade will stay the same. And so what does that do for trust? And so I like looking at these 5 facets of trust. And the 2 there, the three right there in the middle, honesty, openness, and reliability. If we don't lead with those things when we're talking to students and families right now about our continuous learning plans and where this is going, I worry about what that's going to do to relationships when we do come back to school in a more normal setting. And what then, that last one is competence, that people really build their trust in us based on how well we show up and do our job and what we know and how we exhibit that. And so if we do all of this and we're kind of using the wrong carrot and stick, then does our trust really diminish over time with our kiddos? And so what I've been encouraging people to look at instead is this set here of collective trauma responsive practices. And if you're on the webinar right now, feel free to snap a screenshot of this slide. That's what those little cameras are there for. And I'm also happy to share this information with people later. But these are the things that are really going to build that trust and relationship with our kids during this time, and allow us to redesign and allow us to get into a new system that is really built on something important. And but I think it all comes back down to, do our kids and do our families see that we're trying to do things with the right mind? This is a slide that I show even when we're not under social distancing and continuous learning. And I just redid the bullet points underneath of the same categories to focus on this time right now. If I was doing this presentation 8 months ago, you would have seen these same 6 categories. Just the bullet points would have been different. And so I just kind of think that's an opportunity for us to think. We have an opportunity to build relationships. And if we're not going to be open and honest about everything, grades, attendance, diplomas, coming back to school in August, if we're telling kids we're coming back to school in August, I don't know. I know I'm not talking to any elementary teachers in the 6 faces I can see right now. But have you ever promised a group of 4th graders that they could get extra recess if they did something? And then at the end of the day, you never really fully promised extra recess. You hung it out there as an option, and then you don't give them extra recess. Guess what happens at the end of the day? Those 4th graders call you out that you lied to them and they're mad. So if I keep telling kids that we're going to go back to school in August and we don't, they don't care about the CDC. They don't care about Washington. They don't care about Governor Kelly. Those kids know that their teacher promised them going back to school in August, and we're not there. I think trust is the big thing here right now, and redesign, not redesign, all of this.
Katie, I'm gonna share a slide. I want you to comment on it. We showed this 2 weeks ago. How are these levels, how do they play into what you talked about with the resilience?
Yeah, I think that we're seeing a lot of this right now. I think this is exactly what I'm hearing from districts. I have kids who are just rebellious and refusing to do the work. And then I have others that I just can't even get to hear from. So, I mean, I can see rebellion and the retreatism there. And I think that most of what we have is probably passive compliance or ritual compliance. It's, for me, so far, it's been far and few between to see authentic engagement. And I don't think that's at the fault of the teachers right now. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying any of that to shame teachers or their plans or anything. I don't know that we have had the learning experiences to know how to provide that in a virtual setting yet. And I want us to keep working to get there, to not settle for good enough right now.
So Katie, have you seen any examples of a teacher whose kids are authentically engaged?
I think the ones that are focusing fully right now on virtual connections with their kids, that are not worried about the assignment piece. I don't know that I've seen any authentic engagement around typical content. It's more the teachers who are having kids bring in something they're showing that they're working on, right? So having a Zoom meeting and they all get to share something they've been doing in the recent, but it's not about any content specifically. I don't know. And again, I mean, I hear mostly from elementary teachers, so I think it does look different at those levels, a lot of choice. And maybe the example here is reading a book on a topic of personal interest and bringing in something, discussing it somehow. Ginger, what are you seeing with authentic engagement or the compliance pieces? I've been talking way too much.
I'm thinking you are super highly caffeinated today. This is
I am caffeinated.
Wound up. Go, girl. I'm seeing it.
Passionate.
Yeah, exactly. So, from the teachers I've been working with, I'm not seeing what their kids are doing. I'm not privileged to that. I get to hear from them what they're reporting from their kids. And nobody is going to go out onto social media and say, yeah, my kids suck. Well, I mean, sometimes they do, and say, I'm having trouble connecting with some of them, and I'm having to make phone calls 3, 4, 5 times. And the kids at secondary level are like, oh, yeah, I know. We totally had that time set to Zoom and I missed it. I'm so sorry. Can we call back? And the teacher's sitting at a meeting, kid doesn't show up, kid says, oh, crap, and then wants to reschedule. So then the teacher is there again. And teachers are getting slammed with a lot of work like that. And I could see where it'd be rough. Steve, I like this slide. And what I really like to do is not to look at it from student engagement, but I want to change the lens a little bit, call it learner engagement, and ask what our administrators are regarding what they're being asked to do. Ask what our teachers are doing, because in larger districts, our buildings didn't get to choose how they implemented the continuous learning plan. It was handed to them in our larger districts, for better, for worse. I understand. I can't say I like it. Smaller districts, you've got one building, you get to build it. And so I think it's very important to have the conversation at all levels of where I am here and where do I want to be, and where do I want my colleagues to be, and my underlings and my superiors, right? Where do I want them to be? And then how do we get vulnerable and talk truth to one another? Because I get it. That's one of the reasons why we might lie to kids about, we're grading you on this and you have a 0 right now. You better get your butt in gear. Because we don't want to seem out of control when we are, but it's hard to admit that, because then parents get nervous. And if they don't believe in us because we don't know what we're doing, but I think that parents understand that we don't know what we're doing, and to lie to them to say we do know what we're doing. I think if we get a little vulnerable and feel okay to trust one another, even before the trust has been totally established, that it might signal to families that we're human and that they may be able, and some won't. There's always that person who's going to be the keyboard hero and talk all sorts of mad grief in the world about teachers and schools. But I really do have belief right now, and I think it's starting to go away, in the humanity of us. When I'm walking through my neighborhood, never have I had more smiles and waves from neighbors than I do right now. But I did notice that yesterday, the waves and smiles are less. Maybe I was dressed funny. I don't know. But I think we have a window of time to get real human with one another right now. And are we taking that opportunity?
Yeah. Dr. Cook, where do you see administrators on these 5 levels?
You know, from based on conversations and it's a range, but I would say probably the bulk I see in the passive compliant to ritual compliance. We are trying to meet the legislative waivers that have been extended to the state board to meet the needs of not just the state obligation to educate, but the federal level. A lot of this stuff originates out of trying to meet the needs of the federal ESSA law, because that wasn't set aside. It was given some waivers to it, which then were handed to the states, which the states then responded and said, okay, you know, schools are shut down, the learning is not. You know, there are a multitude of states who have actually tapped into the Kansas guidelines and utilized those. So that speaks so well to the design and the work that group did. I think it became passive compliance, ritual compliance levels because of we've never done this. And so, and all of a sudden it had to be done quickly, as Katie indicated. And superintendents, principals, everybody stepped back and said, okay, Randy has announced this group is putting guidelines out. Take a deep breath. As soon as they hit the table, we will pick them up and we will start implementing. And so there wasn't this, let me think about it. Let me, you know, build up my buy-in from all my team. It was, this is something we have to do. And people set some of that, I want to buy into this first. They set that aside and said, okay, this is what we're going to have to do. I do think there is a great opportunity, though, to get into some of the things you ladies have described. And it's going to have to come out of the mindset shift in our folks that say, what are those 3 or 4 scenarios that are going to hit us in August? School return as normal. Okay, we return and then have to go back home. We don't return to school. We return to school with major gaps. What are we going to do to make those up? If we can even make them up. You know, there's just so many little scenarios out there.
Or we return way later than August.
Or we return way later than August. Absolutely. And then, or we return, and this could be an interesting scenario. Everybody returns, as Steve said, one student or teacher's diagnosed with a case, but has been in this building, but they shut that building down, but not the other buildings. That could be within a district or it could be in a sector of the state. So now you've got a group of kids not going to school while the other ones go to school.
Unless you have a sibling in the school that shut down.
Yeah.
Then you're probably home quarantined.
Yeah. So I think it's very intriguing, and my curiosity is high in how are we going to create truly a new model that allows us to focus on the success of each student. Because you've described it, Ginger and Katie, there's going to be students and parents who say, you know what, this worked pretty good for me. I like this virtual learning. There's going to be others that say, I got to get back to the classroom. There's going to be some that say, I like the hybrid. And there's going to be some teachers that love the hybrid. And they're going to say, you know, all I need to do is see these kids about twice a week. You know, high schoolers, maybe. I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to be different.
Okay.
How do we not punish those kids who, for whatever reason, have bigger gaps than others?
Right.
You know, right now in the traditional system is you learn this amount in this amount of time, and if you learn it great. If you don't, you're stupid. And if you learn more than that, wow, you're brilliant. And none of those are true, right? So what are we going to do? Those kids who now have this much to learn in this amount of time, are we going to push them through like some sort of Play-Doh extruder and try to make them fit that mold?
Yep.
Or are we going to really practice what we say we preach, which is meeting each kid? And
Yeah.
if so, and that's why I was talking, I said, some families right now, even in that group that I had with its teachers, they really enjoy being with their families. So maybe some kids come to school on Mondays and Wednesdays, and they don't on other days. And maybe how could we create something, and how would we find out if that's what they want?
So you know
I
what?
have had a couple of schools talk about that gap, and to say, it's actually been 3 of my redesign schools saying, well, we don't know what we'll do when we return, because no matter when we return, there will be gaps that are larger than exist right now. There are gaps now. The gaps will be larger than exist right now. Do we go back to school? And I still remain, we're just looping with our kids for this next year, and I remain their teacher, and we move on together. Are there ways where we just say, no, we're now grade banding, and this is K2 and this is 3-5, and now all of our K2 teachers are K2 teachers, and we put kids where they need to be, when and where they need to be. And so those conversations are coming up. Will we follow through with them? And is that really the best situation?
See, and Katie, you bring up what keeps rolling through my head. It's, will this lead to the erosion of the agrarian calendar, and 2, the age, time, and content that we structure our schools on right now? Because with grade bands, or maybe it's just you're in a learning process for the next 13 years, and we know that you need to be able to operate in our society with these skills, and we've got to get you there. I don't know. What will that look like? Because there's going to be, and then will it change the workforce? Because you will have, and I'm already hearing it, negotiation issues, teacher union issues. Okay, we're done at the end of May. No, well, are we? What are you if you got a bunch of kids that are in the middle of something and they want to keep rolling along? I don't know. This is going to be real interesting. I think we need to start really deeply exploring that.
I think that
Muted yourself, Steve.
Steve, you're muted.
I'd unmute you if I could.
I'm going to go to this slide, but don't read it as classroom. Read it as the school engagement. Okay, the engaged school, the compliant school, the off-task school. What makes each of those occur? What do we do that when we come back, whatever it looks like in the fall, what do we do so it's an engaged school?
Is that a rhetorical question, or do you want real answers?
I want real answers.
I think we have to talk to our communities, to our kids, to our parents, and say, are we just going to spend these next few months filling in gaps? By the way, I don't like the gap that we're saying right here, right now, because what that is a word that compares where we are to traditional. And if we're going to change something, we can't use the word gap, because it's not a gap unless we're trying to get back to traditional.
Yeah.
So we got to stop that, 1. And 2 is we got to say, what do we want and need with this? What did you like about being at home? What did you not like? And how do we build together what our community is?
See, and I think you're now talking about the foundational part of that is the relationship, because I can't have that conversation with you as a community member. I don't have any kids in school anymore. I can't have that with you unless I trust you and I have a relationship with you that allows me to speak freely and say, I understand in the old model you gave my children 15 little classic novels to read. I don't believe that that's necessary anymore. I don't know, maybe, but I got to be able to verbalize that as a community member and know that it's okay.
My mind goes here to the kids. How are we going to ask kids these questions? Not just their parents, but as we were getting started today, I showed Steve that here on our walls right now, we're building our own little Wellington Engagement Index here on the wall to help my kiddo think about what she wants to spend her time doing, because school's providing some stuff. And it takes an hour, and there are 8 hours in the day, and she doesn't need to do more, but she can and wants to. And she's 8, and she's able to walk through her normal school day and place things in those categories of entertained, bored, grind, and engaged. I mean, I just very lightly explained what those are, and she's going through and saying, okay, Lexia, yeah, that's entertaining. It's easy and it's fun. I like getting on there, but it's not engaging. If an 8-year-old can do that, we need to be asking them those questions too when we come back, and buffering that with what we know they don't know that they need, because there is a little bit of that. I'm not going to say there isn't. If it was up to my 8-year-old, she would be in makerspace and PE all day, according to her chart right now. Now, I'm going to argue she could learn a lot in makerspace and PE, but I get that there are things that maybe could be addressed quicker in a different way or more efficiently, whatever. But she can put those things on a chart. How can we use that information from 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds that we discount and think that they're not old enough for them? That's my elementary teacher coming out and saying, let's not just talk to high school kids about what they want, and not just talk to parents about what they want.
Anytime we have conversations about hearing from people what they want, which I fully believe in with all my soul, I believe that, and we'll wrestle with the conversation about what we need. But it always comes back to the Henry Ford quote for me is, if I'd asked my customer what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Yeah.
They don't know what they don't know. They don't know, which is why those conversations are so important, to be open and vulnerable. And if you're in a district, in a school right now that is carrot and sticking kids, and your colleagues and your teachers and then you're not you don't have that development, that culture of trust and vulnerability built in. To me, that's where we have to start right now in order to really develop that in August, so that we can truly move forward, not just try to fill a gap back to where we were.
Yeah.
Which takes a little bit of, Brene Brown has a new podcast, and the first one was great, and the title of it is FFTs, and you'll have to ask Brene Brown what that stands for. But she talks about how this is the first time we are doing things like this, and what we have to be willing to let go of and think about as we're experiencing any kind of first time. And one of the things that I took away from it is we have to, and we talk about this in INL all the time in our inspired leadership work, we have to release judgment and embrace curiosity, right? And I have to release not just my own judgment, I have to release the fear that someone else will be judging me if I backtrack, if I change, if I ask. And I think that's one thing that's holding people back right now, is not wanting to look wishy-washy, not look incompetent, look incompetent. We have to be willing to let go of that fear, be vulnerable enough to say, I don't have the answers. I don't know what anything other than a faster horse looks like. Can we build it together? It's a hard space to be.
And how do I stay quiet if someone else has a vision, and not just get them to be quiet and fill a gap, but then let them run for a little bit. And by the way, somebody else has a different idea, which is different. I want to let them run for a little bit too. And let's come back and then compare notes. And maybe we need that third option, that we can't build the right way right now. And then we might want to have multiple boats in the water pulling the big old ship forward.
Ladies, we've been going 45 minutes. I certainly wish that we could draw you out of your shells. And
I can never get them to say anything.
so, but I
I have no opinions.
I do want to give you a minute to kind of, your last thought, the last word. Ginger?
As always, I'm hopeful. I see where we could be. I see a very clear set of paths to be there. Unfortunately, nobody put me in charge. Or maybe fortunately.
What were they thinking?
I don't know. It's not painful for me to do that, other people, but I know that there are other paths that I don't yet see. And that's what's exciting. And that they don't come into place until we take a next step. And that we have to start doing in order to figure it out.
Yep.
And so again, that's where I'm hopeful. I don't know. And this is what I used to tell my SteamMaker kids. Listen, I don't know, but I'll bet if I put my brain with yours and we rub them together, and I'll bet if we talk to some other people, I'll bet we can figure it out.
Yep. Katie?
I'm feeling like I want teachers and administrators and district stakeholders to know that it's okay to not know right now and to keep moving forward anyway. That we can take small steps. We don't have to have all of the answers right away. We don't have to, I think with redesign, sometimes we think we put all of this stuff into place and we've prototyped and we've researched and we've done all of this formal stuff, and then it's supposed to be perfect and I've redesigned, I've got a banner outside, that's not what this is. Right now, we could pick one area to change and to focus on and get that solid and see where that leads us to the next step. We don't need to redesign the entire system at one point. So don't be afraid to pivot. Don't be afraid to say, this little piece right here isn't working well. And I think if we just did this, it would begin to a ball rolling to get further down the road. We'll get there together. Let's not isolate. Let's not be fearful.
Dr. Kerr,
Build a new system. Go ahead.
you get the absolute last word.
Well, my absolute last word is the Jerry Garcia statement. Somebody has to do something. It's incredibly pathetic. It's going to have to be us. So with that, I just want to thank these two ladies again. They're always amazing, always fun to have on, and always fun to have conversations with. So thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Wyckoff, for hosting. And to the folks behind the scenes, Stacy and Glenn, thank you very much. And we will see you again in May. Let's try a different.
We're going to go backwards.
Yeah. Starts with an M. So let's go with May this time. Okay.
Okay.
So
We'll
I've been in this basement office 35 days. So
Too long.
hey, thank you everybody for joining us, and we always have fun and we learn so much from these ladies. Do appreciate it. Thank you.
Is that the coronavirus bunker that you're in?
Yeah, could be.
Okay. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us, and it's actually 3 weeks from today before our next redesign. There's an extra week in there to get to the first Wednesday, and you guys have a great afternoon. Take a little time off. I'm going to take the three-legged wonder dog and we're going to go play golf.
Woo!
All right. You have fun.
Hit it far and straight.